Welcome to 10-Minute Spanish, where we present clear, concise lessons to help you improve your practical language skills and increase your knowledge of the Spanish language. Today's video is a response to a question asked by one of our viewers, LAKEY, who writes, "One thing I still can't do is roll my double R. I've watched all the videos on YouTube that teach how to do it, but I still can't. Any advice?" Thanks for asking, LAKEY. To be honest, I've avoided making a video on this topic, because with all the videos and articles available on the internet on how to trill the Spanish R, I didn't think I had anything original to contribute. But after receiving your question, I decided to read some of the top articles, watch some of the more popular videos on YouTube, and read some of their comments, and I can see that there are still important questions to be answered. I think some of those articles and videos have some useful suggestions for practice exercises and that sort of thing, but I haven't seen one yet that gave an accurate description of what the tongue actually does to produce the trill sound. And a fair number of their commenters expressed frustration since they meticulously followed the presenter's explanation in the video and were unable to use that explanation to produce the correct sound. So let's get started and see if we can help you make a breakthrough with the pronunciation of the trilled R. In order to illustrate what the organs of the mouth are doing during the pronunciation of the trilled R, I'll be using diagrams like this one. Here we see illustrated in profile the various parts of the mouth and face, such as the nose, lips, teeth, tongue, hard and soft palate, and the gummy ridge behind the upper teeth, known as the alveolar ridge. The tongue and the alveolar ridge are the parts we'll be focusing on most in this lesson. The incorrect explanation of the trilled R that I see in some videos and articles goes like this. Hold your tongue straight so the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge. Keep the tip of it relaxed so that it can flap up and down, and then gently force air between the tongue and the alveolar ridge, causing the tip of the tongue to vibrate up and down. This explanation is simply wrong. This is not what's happening inside the mouth when you pronounce a trilled R. To prove the point, let's follow this explanation to the T and see what sound we get. Okay, tongue straight, tip of the tongue on the ridge. Here we go. This noise is not a speech sound in any language I'm aware of. It certainly isn't the trilled R. So there's definitely something wrong with that explanation. Okay, so what's really happening in the mouth when someone trills the R? First, the tongue is not flat or straight. In fact, the overall shape of the tongue is cupped, with the sides and tip of the tongue raised and the center slightly depressed. Here's a photograph demonstrating the tongue in an exaggerated cup shape. Admittedly, the tongue doesn't cup quite this dramatically when pronouncing a trilled R, but still, the tongue is cupped like this rather than flat and straight. When pronouncing the trilled R, the sides of the tongue touch the sides of the palate, and the underneath side of the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge. Here's a photo showing what the tongue looks like when it's correctly positioned and touching the palate. Of course, the mouth is normally not open this far when trilling the R. Our volunteer is only opening her mouth this wide so you can see what's going on in there. Here's a diagram showing the correct position of the tip of the tongue relative to the alveolar ridge. In a diagram like this, we can't show the cupping of the sides of the tongue, but we can show the curve at the tip. Observe that the tongue is not flat and straight. Rather, the tip of the tongue is curved up and back. And notice what part of the tongue actually makes contact with the alveolar ridge. It's not the tip of the tongue, but rather the underneath side of the tip of the tongue. Also important to understand is that the tip of the tongue does not vibrate against the alveolar ridge up and down in the vertical plane, but more back and forth in the horizontal plane. I can't tell you exactly what angle the plane of the vibration is, but it's definitely more horizontal than vertical. So let's follow this explanation to the letter and see what happens. Tongue cupped, sides of the tongue touching the palate, tip of the tongue curved up and back, underneath side of the tip touching the alveolar ridge, keeping the whole tongue as relaxed as possible, and then making some noise with the vocal cords and seeing what happens. Yeah, that's the trilled R. Alright, nothing is perfect, and neither is this explanation, but it's a much more accurate description than most common ones out there. Now let's talk about what activities you can do to learn how to produce this sound and incorporate it into Spanish words. If I were a student just learning this sound, I would follow this sequence. Start by simply learning to vibrate the tip of the tongue. Look at the photos and diagrams I presented earlier. Get your tongue into the correct position and try to make it vibrate. One way to do that is to build up a little pressure in your mouth and then release it while holding your tongue in the correct position. You can do this by making a p sound followed by a prolonged trill. Think about imitating a cat's purr. Once you can make the purring noise, add the sound of your voice. So instead of prrr, go brrr, 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 brrr. Now, once students have reached this point, they sometimes feel like they've figured it out, and they don't need to do anything else. I disagree. There are lots of weird sounds that we can produce with our mouths that we're still incapable of incorporating into words during normal speech. In order to be able to use this sound as a useful component of words, we need to train our mouths to produce it as part of a word. So after you've gotten so that you can produce the brrr sound, I suggest you begin adding it to English words, because these are words you already know you pronounce correctly. As you practice these, I recommend you really get into it. Imagine you're a villain from a Bond movie, or Gandalf from Lord of the Rings or something, and pronounce these words with emotion and flair. Rot, rat, royal, rapid, round, Roman, raven, respond. Then, once you've learned to incorporate the sound easily and fluidly into English words, practice including it in the correct spot in Spanish words. Remember that not all Spanish R's are trilled this way. For starters, just trill R's at the beginning of words, and when two R's appear side by side in the middle of a word. There are other cases in which R's are trilled, but until you've learned what those are, you can start with these two cases. Rápido, rata, relámpago, radio, carro, perro, gorra, tierra. Practice pronouncing entire sentences with trilled R's in the correct places. Lo leí en una revista. Me asustó su reacción. Ella es la reina de Inglaterra. ¿Te gusta el arroz? Escríbelo en el pizarrón. Ella tiene razón. No me gustan las películas de horror. Of course, there's more to say about Spanish R's. The trilled R is not the only R that exists in the Spanish language. Spanish also has what's called the flapped R, and we didn't talk about that R at all in this video. We could also talk about how to avoid common mistakes made by English speakers, and acceptable alternatives to the trilled R if you're truly incapable of producing it. Yes, there are Spanish dialects that don't have a trilled R and pronounce some other sound in that position. I recommend that you learn to trill the R and try to imitate standard Spanish pronunciation, but if you absolutely can't, there are alternatives. But all of these are topics for other videos. Addie Case, thanks again for your question. I hope you found this video useful. If anyone else has questions, please feel free to ask in the comments section of any of my videos. I'd be happy to consider making a video just for you.